there were three nurses in a morgue. They entered a room where they had discovered that there was a dead man lying on the bed with a heart on. The first nurse was very forward and said, "Wow, I have never seen that before. I can't let that go to waste." After saying this, the first nurse sat and wrote it. The second nurse did the same. The third nurse explained that she couldn't as she was on her period. After a bit of convincing, she eventually wrote it. After 3 minutes, the man woke up. The nurses said, "What the hell? You were dead a few minutes ago." The man replied, "Yeah, I was, but I feel great now. I've had 2 jump starts and a blood transfusion." Beautiful warm spring day and a man and his wife are at the zoo. She's wearing a cute, loose-fitting, sleeveless pink sprint dress with straps. As they walk through the ape exhibit and pass in front of a very large gorilla, the gorilla goes ape. He jumps up on the bars, holding on with 1 hand and 2 feet, grunting and pounding his chest with the free hand. He's obviously excited at the pretty lady in the wavy dress. The husband notices his excitement and suggests that his wife tease the poor fellow. The husband suggests she pucker her lips, wiggle her bottom, and play along. She does, and Mr. Gorilla gets even more excited, making noises that would wake the dead. Then the husband suggests that she let one of her straps fall. She does, and Mr. Gorilla is just about to tear the bars down. "Now try lifting your dress up your thighs," the husband says. This drives the gorilla absolutely crazy. Suddenly, the husband grabs his wife by the hair, rips open the door to the cage, slinks her in with the gorilla and says, "Now tell him you have a headache." Bride tells her husband, "You know, I'm a virgin and I don't know anything about it. Can you explain it to me first?" "Okay, sweetheart. Putting it simply, we will call your private place the prison and call my private thing the prisoner. So what we do is put the prisoner in the prison, and then they make love for the first time. Afterward, the guy is lying face up on the bed, smiling with satisfaction. Nudging him, his bride giggles. Darling, the prisoner seems to have escaped. Turning on his side, he smiles. Then we will have to re-imprison him. After the second time, the guy reaches for his cigarettes, but the girl, thoroughly enjoying the new experience of making love, gives him a suggestive smile. Darling, the prisoner is out again. The man rises to the occasion, but with the unsteady legs of a recently born foal. Afterward, he lies back on the bed, totally exhausted. She nudges him and says, "The prisoner has escaped again." Limpy turning his head, he shouts at her, "It's not a life sentence, okay?" A man goes to a restaurant and orders a chicken dish. By the time the food is ready and he's about to eat, the waiter comes back and says, "Sir, I'm afraid there has been a mistake. You see, that police officer who is sitting at the next table is a regular customer of ours, and he usually orders the chicken dish. The problem is, this is the last chicken in the house. I'm afraid I'll have to take this dish to him and arrange for another dish for you." The guy gets really upset and refuses to give up his food. The waiter walks over to the other table and explains the situation to the officer. A few minutes later, the officer walks over to the man's table and says, "Listen, and listen good. That is my chicken you're about to eat, and I'll warn you, whatever you do to that chicken, I'll do the same to you. You pull out one of its legs, I'll pull out one of yours. You break one of its wings, I'll break one of your arms." The man calmly looks at the chicken, then sticks his middle finger in the bird's rectum, pulls it out and licks it. He then gets up, drops his pants, bends over and says, "Go ahead." How to impress a woman. Compliment her, cuddle her, kiss her, care for her, love her, tease her, comfort her, protect her, hug her, hold her, spend money on her, wine and dine her, care for her, stand by her, support her, go the end of the earth for her, buy Valentine's gift for her, always remember your wedding dates, give her attention, give her a massage, take her out on fancy restaurants and treat her like she's the only queen in the world. How to impress a man. Go up to him without clothes. Three women were sitting around talking about their husband's performance as a lover. The first woman says, "My husband works as a marriage counselor. He always buys me flowers and chocolate before we make love. I like that." The second woman says, "My husband is a motorcycle mechanic. He likes to play rough and slaps me around sometimes. I kinda like that." The third woman just shakes her head and says, "My husband works for Microsoft. He just sits on the edge of the bed and tells me how great it's going to be when I get it." A guy has been asking the prettiest girl in town for a date and finally she agrees to go out with him. He takes her to a nice restaurant and buys her the gourmet dinner with expensive wine. On the way home, he pulls over to the side of the road in a secluded spot. They start necking and he's getting pretty excited. He starts to reach under her skirt and she stops him, saying she's a virgin and wants to stay that way. "Well, okay," he says. "How about a blowjob?" "Yuck," she screams. "I'm not putting that thing in my mouth." He says, "Well, then how about a job?" "I've never done that," she says. "What do I have to do?" "Well," he answers, "remember when you were a kid and you used to shake up a Coke bottle and spray your brother with it?" She nods. "Well, it's just like that." So he pulls it out and she grabs hold of it and starts shaking it. A few seconds later, his head flops back on the hard disk. His eyes close. Snot starts to run out of his nose. Wax blows out of his ear and he screams out in pain. "What's wrong?" she cries out. "Take your thumb off the end." Roger is a hard worker and he spends most of his nights bowling or playing volleyball. One weekend his wife decides that he needs to relax a little and take a break from sports. So she takes him to a club. The doorman at the club spots them and says, "Hey Roger, how are you tonight?" His wife, surprised, asks her husband if he has been here before. No, he's just one of the guys I bowl with." They are seated and the waitress approaches, sees Roger and says, "Nice to see you, Roger. A gin and tonic as usual?" His wife's eyes widen. "You must come here a lot." No, says Roger. "I just know her from volleyball." Then a stripper walks up to the table. She throws her arms around Roger and says, "Roger, a table dance as usual." His wife, fuming, collects her things and storms out of the bar. Roger follows her and spots her getting into a cab. So he jumps into the passenger seat. His wife looks at him, seething with fury, and lets Roger have it. At this, the cab driver leans over and says, "Sure looks like you picked up a bitch tonight, Roger."